Hi, third grade. Today, Miss Gella is going to be reading a story called The Beast of the Desert. And before I read this story, on page 24, first page in your scanned PDF, it goes over multiple meanings. It's titled at the top, What Does It Mean? So some words have multiple meanings. The way the word is used in the sentence helps you know the meaning of the word. What do the underlined words mean in these sentences? And so you have a sentence, the wild steer tried to buck off the cowboy. And then you have a second sentence, Dad had to carefully steer the car to avoid hitting a big buck that ran across the road. And I'll just show you, you have these two different images. And obviously the illustrations help understand the difference, but here we see the cowboy and he's being bucked off of the steer, and here he is steering away. So in your reading, and not just this story, but in many other books, articles, stories that you may read, you may find words that have multiple meanings. Can you think of any words that might have multiple meanings? Okay, here we go. This is The Beast of the Desert. It's a realistic fiction by Millie Howard. It's illustrated by Del Thompson and Sam Laterza. And I want you to think as you read, what words can you find with multiple meanings? Here we go. Wild Horse Canyon. Leather creaked as Orly shifted in his saddle and one of the ranch hands turned to look at him. Already tired? Slim asked, grinning at Orly. When I was your age, I could ride 50 miles without getting off my horse. Why, one time. Orly grinned as Slim launched into one of his tall tales. Tired? On his first wild horse roundup? Orly thought of all the times he had begged to come and had been told that he was not old enough. He straightened in his saddle, easing the growing stiffness in his legs. The men had been riding since before dawn. Last week, a rancher had told Grandpa that a red stallion had been seen in the canyons bordering the desert. They had never gone this far on a roundup before, but Grandpa said that this particular stallion and his band of mares were worth riding miles for. The red-rimmed canyons ahead of them were outlined against the bright sun, their rocky walls glowing pink and orange. The men slowed their horses, looking for signs of the wild horses. Seeing none, they rode into the canyons. Orly craned his neck, staring up at the rocks towering above him, almost forgetting about the wild horses. There's pictures. Grandpa turned down another canyon, holding his hand up for quiet. Orly held his breath but heard nothing. When Grandpa motioned, they rode on and entered an arroyo. A stream! And grass, Orly said, surprised. This is why the stallion is bringing his mares here, Grandpa said. He inspected the rocky walls carefully. Here, he said, pointing to an opening in the rocks, a dry wash. Orly gave a questioning look, and Grandpa explained, used to be part of the stream, but it's dried up now. We can block it off, drive the horses into it, and capture the whole band. He turned to face Slim. Slim, climb up on those rocks and keep an eye out for the stallion and his mares. Grandpa, may I? Orly began. Grandpa grinned. Can you use a helper, Slim? Why, sure, Slim replied. Got another story to tell anyway. Orly followed Slim, matching handholds up the rocks to the top of the mesa. They lay on a huge flat rock looking out over the desert. Slim had almost finished his tale when a trail of dust appeared on the horizon. Here they come! Slim pushed his hat back on his head and grinned at Orly. I can't wait to get my saddle on that red stallion. What a ride we'll have! Orly peered over the edge of the rock and shaded his eyes against the glare of the sun. You can't see that far, Slim, he said. Why, you had better believe I can, son. Just wait and see. There's the pictures. Orly watched the trail of dust drift skyward as it moved closer. At last, he could see the band of wild horses' manes flowing as they galloped toward the arroyo. "Let's get moving," said Slim. Orly backed away from the edge of the rock and they scrambled down. "The horses are coming, Grandpa," Orly called. "Are you ready?" Grandpa looked up from the tangle of mesquite branches he and the cowboys had used to block the dry wash. He shoved the last branch into place and wiped his face. "About as ready as we'll ever be," he said to the excited boy. "Mount up, partner." "Hurry, Grandpa. They might leave before we get there," Orly urged. "Hold on there, Orly," laughed Grandpa. "That red stallion brought his mares down for water and grass, so they're in no hurry to leave." As he and Orly swung into their saddles, Grandpa called to the cowboys, "Make sure you get the horses turned into the dry wash. That stallion is a smart one, and he won't give us another chance." "Sure thing, Mr. Sloan," Slim said, laughing. "The animal that can outsmart old Slim here hasn't been born." Orly and Grandpa rode their horses around to the mouth of the arroyo. The band of horses had finished drinking and was grazing along the stream. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Grandpa pointed to the leader of the band. The stallion's red coat was easy to spot among the darker mares. "He's the one we need to head off. The others will follow him." "Let's go, son," said Grandpa. They spurred their horses out from under the trees. Yelling and waving their hats, they rode toward the band of horses. Here's Orly. The red stallion reared and galloped away, his mares close behind him. They splashed through the shallow water and raced toward the dry wash. "Hi-yee!" yelled Orly, waving his hat in the air. Through the dust, he saw Slim and the others gallop out in front of the racing horses. Then he saw another dim shape appear behind the waving men. A roar from the strange creature echoed in the canyon. As Slim turned to look behind him, the wild horses swung into the dry wash. They skidded to a halt at the blocked end. Then, with a wild rush, the stallion headed back through the opening. "Stop them, boys!" shouted Grandpa. He and Orly urged the horses faster, trying to close the gap. But the cowboys were having trouble. Their horses were jumping and bucking, trying to get away from a large animal. Grandpa swung his horse around, pushing Orly's pony out of the way as the wild horses swept past them. "We've lost them, Grandpa!" Orly's eyes filled with tears as the horses disappeared around the bend. But his disappointment was short-lived. Grandpa was staring at the huge, dirty beast trotting through the dust. It had long, thin legs and a curved neck. It held its head high and looked down its long nose at them. Slim galloped up, swinging his rope. "Let's see what this thing is," he said, the rope looped neatly over the strange animal's neck. The animal jerked its head back and spat. Slim quickly dropped the rope and wiped his wet face. "Dirty beast!" Slim scrubbed his face. The animal turned and trotted away into the dry wash. "Throw those mesquite branches across the gap," Slim called to the other cowboys. The animal moved slowly about as they blocked the way out of the makeshift corral. "What is it, Grandpa?" asked Orly. "Well, Orly," replied Grandpa, "I think it's a camel." "A camel?" The Bronco Buster. Orly climbed on the rocks to get a better look at the camel. "It does have a hump, Grandpa, but where did it come from?" Grandpa rubbed his chin. "The army brought some camels to America about 15 years ago. They were going to use them in the desert. Nothing ever came of it, though." Slim stuffed his handkerchief back into his pocket. "Didn't they just turn them loose in the desert when the Civil War started?" "That's what I heard," Grandpa replied, "though some were used in traveling animal acts. This one probably hasn't been loose too long. It's not very scared of us." One of the cowboys looked sideways at Slim. "That's one four-legged beast you can't ride," he said slyly. "Slim can ride anything. You can ride him, can't you, Slim?" "Why, sure, Orly," Slim said. "It's a four-legged animal like any other one. Too bad we don't have a saddle to fit him." "Slim, you've been bragging that you can ride anything big enough to hold you, saddle or bareback," said the cowboy. "This one's big enough to hold you all right." The cowboy jumped down and grabbed the end of the rope. "Here you go," he said, tossing it to Slim. "Ride him, Slim," called Orly. Slim climbed slowly down into the dry wash. "How do I get on?" he asked. "Lead him over to that big rock," said Grandpa. "Maybe you can try jumping on him." Slim didn't look too happy, but he climbed on the rock and pulled on the rope. When the camel was close enough, Slim took a deep breath and jumped. The camel stepped sideways and Slim sprawled flat in the dust. The men roared with laughter and slapped their legs. And there's Slim drinking on the camel. Slim staggered to his feet and looked at the camel. The camel stared back at him. I'm not through with you yet, Slim said, climbing back on the rock. Wait a minute, Slim, called Grandpa. Put this through the hole in his nose. He tossed Slim a long piece of leather. When Slim looped it through the camel's nose, he was able to pull the camel closer to him. Again, he jumped. This time, he landed on the camel's hump. For a moment, it looked as though he had made it. Then he slid slowly over the hard other side. It was 7 feet to the ground. Slim hit hard. For a moment, he lay quietly, then he crawled to his feet and brushed himself off. His critics shouted encouraging remarks that Slim stubbornly ignored. Grandpa, said Orly, the stories in my school book say camels always kneel to let the riders get on. Can we pull him down for Slim? Good idea, son, said Grandpa. He climbed over the rocks. 2 of the other cowboys jumped down into the corral. Together, they pulled the protesting camel to its knees. Hop on, Slim, the cowboys shouted. Slim climbed on the camel's hump. Clutching the leather strap in one hand and holding on with his knees, he waved his hat and said, Let's go! In one swift moment, the camel unfolded its long back legs. Slim flew over the camel's head. Good ride, Slim! The men slapped each other on the back. All right, I've got to ask you all, how do you feel for these animals? To be completely honest with you, and this is just Miss Gella's opinion, I feel really bad for this camel, and honestly, I feel really bad for the stallion that they're trying to catch. This is no picnic, you know, Slim said as he crawled to his feet. I'd like to see you try it. He shook his hair out of his eyes and glared at the long-legged beast. Pull him down, he said. The men brought the camel to its knees again. Slim climbed back on the hump. This time he pulled the strap tight with both hands and braced his feet on either side of the camel. Let go! Let's go! He yelled again. This time when the camel lurched to its back feet, Slim braced himself against the camel's long neck. Then the camel unfolded its front legs and stood up. Slim clung tightly to the strap, swaying with the movement of the camel. He did it, yelled Orly. The men cheered. Slim's eyes twinkled and he grinned from ear to ear. It's all in knowing how, he said. Can we take the camel home, Grandpa? Orly asked. Well, it sure isn't what we came looking for, said Grandpa. There's not a chance of catching the wild horses now, but won't the folks be surprised? He chuckled at the thought. Can you ride it home, Slim? Slim swayed back and forth as he rode the camel around the dry wash. I believe I can, Mr. Sloan. It was a strange crew riding through the canyons on the way home. Slim rode far ahead of the still, nervous horses. As the camel topped the crest of the hill, it was outlined against the setting sun. Look, Grandpa, said Orly. He pointed to the camel and its rider. Grandpa shook his head. Who would have thought of it? A camel in America. And this illustration here is what we would call a silhouette. So now we have our think and discuss questions. Okay, so feel free to pause if you need to during these questions. Number 1, what words can you find with multiple meanings? And so in order to do this, you might need to go back and look at the PDF that is attached in Google Classroom and look, do you see any words that might have multiple meanings? Number 2, what unusual animal did the cowboys find when they went on a wild horse roundup? Number 3, what happened when Slim tried to ride the camel? And I would add to that question, how many times did it take him to finally ride the camel? And number 4, what unusual animal would you like to try or ride? That is an opinion question. So I'm asking for your opinion. There's no right or wrong answer there. If Miss Gella could ride any animal, can you guess, looking at my beautiful unicorn pillow? If I could ride an animal, it would be a unicorn, but you know. Vocabulary, we have arroyo, horizon, protesting, braced, mesa, sprawled, canyons, mesquite, staggered, and clutching. And then on page 41, we have a look again section. And so here we are going to be using a T-chart. Here's an example. It shows you of a T-chart. And so a T-chart, just to review, can be used to compare and contrast, similar to a Venn diagram. And we usually compare and contrast two groups of information. So this chart contrasts riding a horse with riding a camel. So it has an example there. And so on the left, you see riding a horse, and on the right, you see riding a camel. So for instance, riding a horse, you climb up, you sit on the saddle, you squeeze the horse with both heels and say walk, and you move with the horse. However, riding a camel, you tie a long piece of leather through the camel's nose, pull the camel's front legs down to make him kneel, and you pull the leather strap close and brace yourself against the camel's long neck. What would you like to learn to ride? So use the following questions to help you plan what to do. What will you ride? And then how will you ride it? Can't wait to discuss with you all in class and hear your answers. And Miss Gella will see you all next time.